What did we say in the beginning?
Hi, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Ross.
Today we're going to talk about why cities are important from a biblical perspective. This week we want to talk about why cities are so important, or why we as Christians would maybe want to focus our efforts on bringing the whole gospel to a whole city.
That's a great question, and I think the first place to start with the answer is to look in Scripture and to see, are cities important in Scripture? Is that something that we need to investigate a little bit more? Some of the things you might notice are that the word city is used almost 1,000 times in Scripture, and that doesn't count all the different actual names of cities that are used.
Right.
So the prevalence of cities is just kind of overwhelming in every book of the Bible, really. And the other thing is that those cities aren't just sort of like settings. They take on a character.
Yeah, we had talked about Babylon in our last episode, kind of being this archetype of the rebellious city.
Yep.
And it's really talked about in that way as like a character. And then Jerusalem is kind of spoken about as a character. We even see Jesus weeping over Jerusalem, and he addresses Jerusalem by name as if it were a person almost.
Yep. That's right. Yeah, and Jerusalem, actually, that's an important word to know. What does that actually mean? It means the city of peace, or the city of shalom. And so one of the kind of core passages that we think of when we talk about cities today is in Jeremiah 29, verses 4 through 7. The context of that is that Israel has been taken captive, and they have been sort of exiled and sent to Babylon, and that's where they're supposed to live. And, and the Lord speaks through the prophet Jeremiah and has a message for them, and he tells them something that's sort of strange to them. He doesn't say, hey, I'm coming for you, and this is what you need to do. He says, I want you to plant vineyards and build houses and get married and have kids and grandkids, because you're going to be here for 70 years. Yeah. And he says to actually seek the shalom of the city where I sent you, in verse 7. And the shalom being the peace, the flourishing, kind of the wholeness of what God intended. And so he sends them there and says, you want your city to prosper so that you will prosper.
There's an important lesson there for us as Christians too, because we're in a similar place of exile. Not literally, but in the same way that the Israelites were waiting for God to come back and deliver them from exile. Right. We're waiting for that new Jerusalem that we talked about. We're waiting for God's kingdom to be fully realized on earth. And in the meantime, are we supposed to just wait? Or are we supposed to invest in the place that God has put us? The Israelites probably thought, this is really counterintuitive. Babylon is like the quintessential rebellious city, and we're supposed to seek its prosperity. And I think sometimes we think of large urban areas today as being bad places where there's a lot of sin and corruption.
And we should run from that.
Right. But maybe the lesson from this passage of Scripture is that God's design for his people is that we would go and invest, and that through that investment, through that living in the city and seeking its peace, that the city itself would be redeemed and renewed.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool about that is it gives you such purpose. So one of the things my wife and I have been doing is trying to teach our kids that verse. Jeremiah 29:7, seek the shalom of the city where I sent you. And just, giving them hand motions and everything so they can really remember and realize that they have been sent to the specific city for a reason. And it's to seek its shalom. And there are so many ways they could do that.